Hi, this is John Young for the HL's Institute and for the Village Builders program. And in a recent Q&A, we received a great question, a lot of great questions, but what is a village? What does it look like? What does a village look like when we're village building? How can we imagine that or experience it? So the first thing to keep in mind is that when we're talking about village building, we're talking about building supportive relationship structures, containers that hold us at different levels. In a healthy village, there's elders we can go to who can hear our hearts and hear our stories. There's people who are experienced in something we're passionate about, who can take us on a journey. They can mentor us. They can help us connect. In a healthy natural village, say like I'm working with the San Bushmen in Botswana, nature connection is at the heart and soul of this village. And the reason we do this, the reason we talk about village building at all is because we want to meet one goal for people. And so in village building, we are teaching people how to create integrated systems that come together. This is the idea of a village, where people can rehabilitate their nervous system to awaken their natural potential to connect. They're happier, they're more vital, they have that deep ability to listen to each other's stories. In other words, a commitment to mentoring, because that is the heart of mentoring. They have empathy for all life and respect for nature. This awakens in them a sense of vision, a need to be helpful, and to be truly helpful in a really helpful way. The awareness of what's needed and taking care of it proactively. They have this deep, abiding love for life. They feel fully alive. They develop this loving and compassionate heart and the ability to forgive, themselves, others, and to be more patient, more qualities of elders emerging. They develop this quiet mind, this presence, and their creativity blossoms. They have access to their gift, and out it comes, it shines, and so you could say that they have access to their genius. When we think about village building, we may actually be thinking in terms of our experiences. We might be thinking of, oh, well, a village means there's so many huts and there's people living here and there. I'd like you to sort of let go of the idea that a vision of a village, equals place, like we're all sharing a piece of land or something, because we already are. The piece of land is called planet Earth. And we are already sharing it. So village building is more about how relational dynamics work. We are all really super patterned on educational modeling. We're super patterned on recreational modeling, but connection modeling fell off the map in the postmodern world, in some family lines, 1,000 or more years ago. So, cultural facilitation results in connection. There's these four quadrants, as you can see, and I'll give you a better view of that in a second, but nature information would be one way to think about how to interact with the natural world, or nature experience. I like going out for walks, I like skiing, I like hiking or swimming in the ocean. But nature connection is a whole different set of principles. Deep nature connection is driven by culture. So when we are looking at village building, we're looking at the top two quadrants, right? And they really look different than what you might be used to. So before we go into that, just tell first a little story. You know, when I began this work in nature connection, it was 1983, and I came out with the idea that I'd basically run classes about nature, because I was already an environmental educator. And I started the project. I enrolled 5 earnest students who came from a local high school. They came to me. They wanted to learn from me because the one boy, Matt, he said, hey, I can take karate classes on this corner, I can take gymnastics over here, I can go to that strip mall and I can learn guitar or dance. Where can I go once a week and take lessons in what you do? Because I'm really interested in what you presented at our retreat, and I want to learn that. So, for me, innocently, I'm thinking, well, hour and a half once a week, We'll go out and we'll learn about the trees and the birds and the plants and the animals. A couple months into this, I was joined by the master village builder himself, Ingwe, who is now passed on. He's an ancestor. He passed away in 2005, um, in his 90s. And, he was very much a consummate village builder. He instinctively wove threads of connection between people that created a supportive, layered system of relationships. And when I say layers, I just want you to think of, say, Matt and his peers as one layer. Me as kind of the expert on birds and tracking and survival skills and so on. I'm another layer, right? Ingwe, an elder but a village builder, was another layer. He sat there with us, when we came back from our wanders in the forest, and he would tell us stories, and then he would ask them to tell him stories, the young people that had just been out in the field. And then Ingwe would work with the parents and teach them how to be supportive of their children's nature journey, how to get over their blocks of building friendships between themselves as adults so that they could become aunties and uncles to each other's children, another layer, right? And without me really noticing, because I was busy taking the kids out in the field and doing my expert thing, this other kind of expert was doing this magical village building. And pretty soon what started to happen was that, me and my children, we were invited to visit other families on a regular basis. And my children dropped in and played with these other children who they began to see like cousins, and they really began to see these other adults as aunties and uncles. What I wasn't aware of was all of the kind of, pathway trainings that Ingwe was doing, pretty much just sort of naturally, organically, so it wasn't really obvious. So what we did was we distilled this down, and so the village, these people were scattered all over Monmouth County. We lived, some of us, 40 minutes apart from each other, others closer, but our village was built on getting together. It was built on the agreements we had on our calendars to share quality time together. Not unlike what the Children in Nature Network now calls natural families. Agreed to meet at a park once a month or once a week with other families and share food while the children go off and play. Lightly supervised or not supervised, depending on the safety situation of the environment. Let the children have their nature connection time. Let the adults have people connection time, and let relationships organically form. The kids will quite naturally, instinctively fall into a pattern. This basic model of people gathering together, sharing nature, sharing food, sharing story, sharing time around campfires together, all of this these are simple things that we can all do that literally, if we do them regularly, begin to organically awaken the instincts of village, all by themselves. Last, just yesterday, we celebrated one of my children's birthdays, and one of the people who my son considers an uncle happened to be free, and his daughter was with him, and my daughter and my son grew up with his daughter. We were in an art mentoring community, village-based model where we met regularly, and our children, we had play dates regularly, and so for me, like, even though there wasn't a whole lot of kind of structure to this formation of this relationship, now years later, I can lean on this brother to me, to really be an uncle for my children when I need help. So if I have to go somewhere this evening, and I need some time, I can drop my children off with his children, and he can drop his child off with me. This stuff. It's really basic. It's these are layers. The children being one layer. The parents being another layer. Right. The experts or the specialist in a particular skill being another layer. The elders, oh, awesome. Can we build that in too? Yes, we can. And this is the thing that Ingwe did. Over the years, he attracted people whose children had grown up and moved on, that they wanted to learn about nature and they wanted to be in good company too. So pretty soon there was other elders around Ingwe, and the children had these wonderful kind of grandparent kind of figures in their life, because one of the things you hear so much about is how families have been fractured and how, my mom lives 3,000 miles away, and so my kids don't even get to see, their grandmother, but once every uh, holiday. But that's not really enough. Our nervous system is hardwired for connection. Um, and so what we teach in village building are ways to sort of sort out and organize and train different layers of people who share space and time. One of the questions that was asked was, can this be done virtually? And yes, we do it through our village talk model every single week. People who are all over the world calling into a conversation. So yeah, I mean, it's really about your creativity and your needs. We have these learning pathways that we train people in the village building model. And you've seen this maybe on the website. That a village builder is basically, looking at and sorting community into various layers and then training those layers. Here you're looking at 6 learning pathways for village building, and when people sign up for village building, they get to choose between these. They get to find people in their community to do different ones, and in a way, what you're doing is you're training up band members. This person's learning the bass, this person's learning the drums, this one's learning the guitar, this one's learning the fiddle, and then when they come together, they make beautiful music, and you can look at it like that. Think of it as a community art project. The most foundational pathway for connection modeling is the pathway to nature, and we have numerous offerings. So in the nature connection pathway, there's a number of ways that H. Shields offers, everything from just a simple book like What the Robin Knows that gives you suggestions of how to go out in your backyard and learn bird language, to very deep courses like the Kamana Naturalist Training Program. But basically what our team does is we figure out who in your community has what desire and passion level and time and resource, and then we recommend different pathways to nature. And then we encourage people to, to build threads with things in their backyard, and strings. Eventually they get thicker from building those bonds and those relationships with the trees and the birds, and eventually to do what the Bushmen say, which is to build ropes to all aspects of the natural world. And how do you build ropes? People can go outside a lot and never build a rope with anything. But actually facilitating connection requires a certain nuanced understanding of what we call the art of mentoring. How to create a container that makes people feel safe and relaxed enough to open up and be connective, and that's what we call peacemaking. We have a fire tender's audio course which teaches the basics of how to create containers of connection. And then we have a ongoing series called Village Talk, where people are actually using that container, really on a phone call, and you can get to know all the skills and become comfortable in conversational connective practice. The other pathway is about creating sort of the village feeling, when people come together. And we have a fantastic course which we really love called the Art of Mentoring Leadership training program, and it's a 9-month training course. There's a content pathway called the Acorn Leaders Toolkit, which goes along with the Art of Mentoring Leadership. And then we have the cultural elements, which are, practices, recipe cards, essentially, of things you can do to enhance connection in social settings. If you want to take a group of people even deeper into nature, it's really good to stack the deck. And the way I would do that, like for instance, if I had, a handful of, 5, 6, 7 year olds, maybe 3 or 4 that I was kind of hanging out with in nature, and I wanted to really take them up a level, I would expose them to a child who's a little older than them, who's really passionate about learning nature, learning tracking, learning bird language, and that older child will model and inspire the younger children. If I'm working with adults, I work with adults. I constantly try to attract adults who are really passionate and really great role models for nature connection, and I drop them into the midst of the other adults, and then just magic happens, because connection modeling works with the mirror neurons. It doesn't work only with the intellect. In fact, the intellect plays a much lesser role in connection modeling than it does in educational modeling. So, we train people how to create those refined, what we call coyote mentors, people who can stack that deck and become powerful role models for movement in the community. And, that applies at not just the level of nature connection, but you can have really powerful role modeling at all levels within a community. So, we have a little course, we have a great book called Coyote's Guide to Connecting with Nature, and then a really fun little audio course that shows you how to get to the basics of it and how to get it going in your life and how to sort of enhance connection practices if you happen to be doing nature connection work in your community. Now, because nature connection works and because it increases that empathy, it also increases sensitivity. And of course, there's gifts in this. And one of the gifts is that people fall in love with nature. They fall in love with life. They want to help take care of the earth for the future generations quite instinctively. They become better people. They have those 8 attributes. But the challenge is that they start to, feel like a lot more. They feel more, they see more, they start to feel more the homeless person on the street. They start to feel more pain in their unmet longings and all these kinds of things. And so, we have to work with what we call the skills and tools of grief tending. And we have a number of ways that that's working. We have the Renewal of Creative Path online course, which does a lot of really awesome inner tracking work for the individual. And to me, it's like the essence of the design principles for connection modeling. So every village builder really wants to drop in with that Renewal of Creative Path material. And we have something called All About Anchoring, which is within that Renewal of Creative Path. And it basically teaches you how to create supportive relationships for conversational anchoring, and it's super powerful. And then there's a course that we run called the Vision Initiation Path, which takes all of that even deeper through one-on-one mentoring with Sal Giancarelli and that team, and also live events. But again, remember, these are different options. You don't have to do all of them, but we're just trying to help you see how these different pathways are trained out in communities. And so village building is essentially sort of the art of putting all those other pieces together, right? And we mostly do that by helping people develop out of their Renewal of Creative Path process a plan, how to manifest their ideal scene for their village building pathway. And then they work with what we call the Village Builders Toolkit. And you can have 3 one-on-one consulting calls for you alone or with your triad, the group of people who's helping you. A triad, usually we like to say a minimum of 3 people working in a community together. But, in some communities, 10, 12 people are working together and sharing responsibilities. The main thing is we don't want people to try to take this on completely alone. You can start alone, but, one of the very first things we're going to consult you to do is to develop a small team or a council of people to work with you, because you don't want to take on the responsibility for essentially healing villages that have been shattered for hundreds of years. You want to really have fun doing it. You want to have shared experience with others while doing it, so that you actually nourish from doing it and not burn out and feel unappreciated and so on. So remember, the essence of village building is based on the ecology of law. And law is a funny word in English, but sort of in indigenous thinking, one of our elders, Gilbert Walking Bull, if you look at the center of the H Hills logo, you see the 3 red sticks. They represent the sacred law, the natural law, and the human-made law. But village building wants to take into account, what we would call connective law. So in ancient indigenous culture, ceremony and ritual hold the connection teachings. But in modern times, awareness of how our neurobiology works and awareness of how connection happens, you begin to realize, oh, there is like principles that support connection. You could call this connection law. Yellow color, the natural law, teaches people how to model connective conduct, and in a lot of indigenous cultures, men are deeply initiated in nature to soften them, because women come into the world more empathetic. Men need to learn that. So, and then finally, in a really healthy culture, the women are essentially in charge of the laws that govern humans. because women are thinking about the elders, are thinking about the children, they're thinking about the well-being of everyone. And so, we look at all of this within the village building context. So if I can just overwhelm you for a second with a diagram from Art of Mentoring, think about these little circles of color as people in a community. The collection of all yellows are the people who love, basic nature experience. The people who are bright red on the lower right-hand side are the people who really love going out and playing in nature, whatever it might be, taking hikes or mountain biking. The people in the south there are the ones that are just circled to represent the color white. These are the ones who get really focused on tracking. And the people in the southwest are the ones who really love the plants. And the people in the west are the ones who really love the ecology and so on. So you go around the wheel and you see that each color kind of represents a guild or a specialty. And the further you go out on the away from the center, the younger the people, so you have like the youngest children learning about nature, learning about these different things. Village builders learn to understand the structuring of how to communicate out powerful mentoring to each of these different areas of specialty, and then how to cultivate really healthy balance within little social groupings. Like here in this picture we're calling them clans, but now what it is a mixture of each color, where everyone's specialty sort of influences the other. And this is something that comes right out of the Art of Mentoring Leadership course, but it teaches you to think about, again, different layers. Those dotted lines represent layers towards the center. And you could think of the village builders as those three at the center there who are working with their acorn, their Art of Mentoring Leadership team, to disseminate and disperse energy out. And those little triangles in that one ring there of the different colors are those really stacked deck role model types. So you don't have to do this right off the bat. You don't have to understand it right off the bat, but it helps you to think about how how to think about a village as a pattern of relationships, and not necessarily as a co-located group of people sharing a piece of land. It's actually really quite exciting when you make this work. What you start to see is people go into the attributes of connection much more quickly. People are much happier, much faster. They're healthier. They're more alive. There's a lot more love flowing. And ultimately, that's what we're after. And this can work for just 3 people sharing experiences out in nature and then having dinner together. You can apply it within the context of 30 people having a workshop. 300 people having an event, even if it's a wedding, or a big celebration of some kind. But I like to think of it in terms of, 3 million people working to save us from ourselves. So I hope that answers some of your questions. And of course, get in touch with our staff, and more questions can be answered more specifically. Thank you so much for your interest in village building.